To the transfer show, Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta and Oliver Glasner all have their say on Sterling. There have been £1.68 billion spent by Premier League clubs so far in this window. How much more will we see in the final week?
So I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the market. Maybe happen something.
Anything can happen both ways, and you have to be ready.
I'm aware that there's still work going on behind the scenes.
Mark will lead the team as a captain tomorrow.
Difficult for me to be talking about it because it's not official yet, but I have to say that it's very close.
I would expect the next week to obviously be busy as a whole.
With a week ago, there's still a little bit to do.
I would love to share all that. I think it would be very, very interesting, but I won't.
Michael Bridge, Dharmesh Sheth, our reporters this evening. Right, we're going to start with Raheem Sterling. Frozen out by Chelsea, who are willing to listen to offers, obviously, Michael. Who's interested?
Well, I think Crystal Palace hold an interest, Mike. We've been telling you over the last few weeks after Sarr came in that they would like another wide forward. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about tentative interest in the return of Wilfried Zaha, but we did say it was a potential difficult deal to do in terms of the finances around that deal. I get the similar feeling here. However, Oliver Glasner, really good press conference today, really open on what he said. And why don't we hear from him now on Raheem Sterling?
I think you can name 20 players from Chelsea, especially because they have a big squad. Raheem Sterling is a fantastic player, but doesn't mean that he will be a Crystal Palace player, but he plays for many years in the Premier League. He always scores goals. I don't know how many appearances he has for England, so yeah, he's a great player, but I don't know what happens with him.
Well, we know that Sterling wants to stay in London, so is Arsenal an option? Well, that was put to Mikel Arteta today.
No, I can talk with my time with Raheem. That was exceptional. I think we built a really strong relationship together. He was unbelievable at the time that we were together, and he taught me a lot as well about the individuals, how the players think, how we give them support and help them, and he's someone that I really have strong feelings about.
Obviously, Michael, links are going to be made because of Arteta's time at City with Sterling. Any possibility Sterling could end up being a gunner?
I think it's very unlikely, Mike. I mean, the Crystal Palace one is very interesting, but I look at that and I feel it's more to do with Mikel Arteta's respect and warmth he has towards Raheem Sterling from the days when he coached with him at Manchester City. I don't think there's anything more on that.
Of course, Sterling's played for a lot of top clubs, Liverpool, Chelsea now, and of course, Manchester City. Any chance he could go back there? Well, Pep was asked today. Here's his answer.
How likely or possible maybe Raheem Sterling? Any chance you might want to bring him back to Manchester City as well?
He's a Chelsea player. Absolutely, a Chelsea player. I know I feel so attached with the time we live together with Raheem, and of course I feel attached with Enzo. So I just wish him all the best, but he's of course a Chelsea player.
That was a Catalan straight bat, unless you were wondering. Right, let's talk Jadon Sancho, Dharmesh. Lots of chat yesterday that Juve were interested. Any movement?
Well, I think Juventus are pushing to try and do a deal for the Manchester United forward Jadon Sancho in the final week of this transfer window. No formal bid as yet, but the dialogue is open, we think, between the clubs. Juventus are exploring the conditions of a deal. We understand that they've already explored the personal terms side of it as well, and there have been positive talks on that side of it. But if United were to consider an exit for Jadon Sancho, it's likely they would want a permanent deal for Sancho, or at least a loan that came with an obligation to buy as well. As I mentioned, positive talks have happened over personal terms. So when you hear a line like that, it kind of suggests that there may be a deal that could be done. Now, we do know that earlier on in this transfer window, it didn't look like he was going to go anywhere because Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho put all their issues behind them. They drew a line under all of their issues. He was reintegrated into the first-team squad. He was on the pre-season tour as well. But we're now talking about it again. He didn't play in the first game of the season with an ear infection. He is back training and expected to be in the squad against Brighton. But this story just won't go away. Earlier on in the window, Juventus were interested. but they couldn't meet what we think is a valuation of around £40 million that Manchester United have got on Jadon Sancho. Now, he's got 2 years left on his contract. There's an option to extend for a further year. So if you were talking about maybe a straight loan, you could still envisage that being a positive for United if they were that desperate to see Sancho leave the club. But I think the preference at this stage, if they were to let him go, would be on a permanent deal. There are other European clubs keeping an eye on his situation as well. We do know that Paris Saint-Germain and Borussia Dortmund, who he was on loan and a successful loan spell in the second half of last season, have both had talks with Manchester United at some point during this transfer window. So as it stands, he's a Manchester United player. But I just think this is one to watch in the last 7 days of the window.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly will. Have you seen Ocean's 11? Yeah? You know the bit where they've lined up 10 criminals and George Clooney says to the good-looking bloke, Brad Pitt, he says, do we need one more? We need one more. Yeah. Well, Enzo Maresca has made 11 signings this summer, but he wants one more.
If we sign for sign, it's better if we don't sign, because we don't need to sign players just for sign player. If we sign players that they're going to help us to improve, for sure we need players. Otherwise, we are happy in the way we are. We see if we have chance to bring a nine that can help us and make the difference, we're going to try. Otherwise, we are okay.
So he wants one more, Damesh. Is that going to be Osimhen?
This is a really complex situation now with regard to Chelsea and Napoli, because it's clear that Napoli want to sell Victor Osimhen. It's clear that Chelsea want to sell Romelu Lukaku. We focus on Lukaku for now. We do know that the Napoli sporting director, Giovanni Manna, is still in London trying to finalise this deal for Romelu Lukaku with Chelsea. They had talks yesterday, but those talks bore no resolution to any kind of deal for Romelu Lukaku. In fact, we're told that there was little progress made. Clearly, both clubs want to get this deal done, but clearly both clubs want to do it on their terms. In an ideal scenario, Napoli want to do a loan with an obligation. Chelsea have maintained all along it's got to be a permanent deal. Now, we do think that Napoli might be moving towards that now and thinking maybe we can do a permanent deal. But on the flip side, they don't want to meet Chelsea's valuation. We think Napoli want to bid at around 30 million euros. And we think that bid is made up of 25 million euros initial payment, 5 million euros in performance-related add-ons. That is well short of what Chelsea want. They want around 43 million euros. So this is not a small gap that I sometimes talk about. The gap is there, but it's not insurmountable. This is a difficult one to bridge at the moment. But you get the impression there's a bit of ego at play here, because both clubs are playing on the other one's desire to get the deal done. If you look at it from one point, Antonio Conte, since he came into Napoli, his primary target has been this man, Romelu Lukaku, from minute one that he arrived at that club. And that need has now been heightened. They started the season in horrific fashion. They lost 3-0 to Hellas Verona. He called that performance shameful. It's almost like a message to the hierarchy and Aurelius De Laurentiis to say, we need to sort this out. We need to bring this player in. So Chelsea will look at that and think, we think you're a little bit desperate. But then Napoli, on the flip side, will say, well, hold on a second. We know Romelu Lukaku wants to come to Napoli, and he only wants to come to Napoli because he wants to play under Antonio Conte. And furthermore, there's no other club in for him. Napoli will say, you're in a one-horse race here. We're not competing with anyone, so why should we be paying your valuation when there is a player who's not even training with the first-team squad? He's one of these players who's been ostracised by the management at Chelsea, and he's training away from the first-team squad. So why do Napoli think we don't need to go as high as that valuation? So at the moment, there is stalemate. There are still talks that are ongoing between the clubs to try and find a resolution, because this deal effectively needs to happen in these final 7 days, because it's not going to be good for anyone if it doesn't. What would be just really straightforward and easier for Napoli is that man there, Victor Osimhen. If they can get a deal done for him, maybe even to Chelsea, because we know that they've been working on that deal throughout this transfer window, then everything would be a lot easier, because then they would have a lot more funds that they could play with. OK, look, Chelsea have spent, Michael, over £1 billion. They
They've got a striker they don't want. They haven't got a senior striker. They must have options, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not been all about that man there, has it? We know Samu Omorodion was close from Atletico Madrid. There's been tentative talks in the media about Ivan Toney, but that looks like that's not going to happen. So it's a really interesting. But when you've got the manager saying very clearly there, we need a number 9, and what he saw probably in the UEFA Conference League last night, he knows he needs a number 9. So I'm sure he's going to look to get one before deadline day.
Right, let's talk Bournemouth. They've spent 40-odd million pounds on a Brazilian, and now they are possibly going to get the world's most expensive goalkeeper. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it's another one of those exiled Chelsea players, the ones, when Enzo Maresca says, I don't work with 40-odd players, I work with 25, and this is another one. Kepa, the Chelsea goalkeeper, Andoni Iraola knows him very well from his time at Athletic Bilbao. It's a difficult deal to do financially. It's a complicated one at the moment, but initial talks have been held of a potential loan. We know Bournemouth are looking to get another goalkeeper, so that's one to keep an eye on. Also interested in Aaron Ramsdale as well.
Why complex? Because he's on big wages?
Yeah, it's a bit like, the Raheem Sterling situation as well. We talked about Chelsea, didn't we, in great depth this week about the length of contracts, but we also talked about, in terms of the wages, they're not high wage payers, they're long contract players now. So, again, another player who doesn't have a future at Chelsea.
Do you know what? When you've won the league, what do? You bring in a treble-winning skipper. You bring him back. We're going to hear from Manchester City's Ilkay Gundogan next. We will see you Right, before the break, we were talking Romelu Lukaku. Darmish has got an update. Darms.
Yes, so we were saying that Napoli would be prepared to go from a loan with an obligation to Chelsea to a permanent deal, which is what Chelsea have been after throughout this transfer window. Our colleagues at Sky in Italy are now reporting that Napoli have gone in with a permanent offer for Chelsea striker Romelu Lukaku. We think that bid is €30 million initial payment plus performance-related add-ons. We're not sure how much those performance-related add-ons are. Usually they're around €5 million, so it goes up to about €35 million. But that is with favourable payment terms from Napoli. We are just waiting. We've got in touch with Chelsea to confirm this story and whether or not that bid, in fact, will be accepted or not. So just one that is developing just now. It's come from our colleagues at Sky in Italy, but it appears that Napoli now, what we said, going from a loan with an obligation to a permanent, they might have just done that.
Right, great update. All right, I want to talk Arsenal. We've been talking about Mikel Merino possibly going to Arsenal. The head coach of Real Sociedad says he's gone to Arsenal. Has he?
It's close. It is close. I mean, it's moving closer because of what the manager has said. The Real Sociedad manager, Emmanuel Alguacil, I think you pronounce it, he said that he has said goodbye to Mikel Merino in his news conference earlier today. I'll tell you what he said. He said, I said thank you very much to Mikel. As Real Sociedad coach, I want this type of farewell. He came at the age of 22 without making it. He's had 6 incredible years with a brutal performance, a cup and 5 participations in Europe. He has left money, 30-odd million. He feels Real Sociedad and he has gone to Arsenal. There's still work to do on the Arsenal end, of course. He would still have to have a medical and finalise those personal terms. And that 30-odd million that the manager is talking about is actually around £32.5 million all in. So we think it's around 27.5, £28 million in initial payment and the rest in performance-related add-ons. And you would think, given how long this deal has taken to get over the line, that Real Sociedad will have been trying to get all of those performance-related add-ons to be as achievable as possible to get it over the line. But still a little bit of work to do on the Arsenal end, but you would expect this one to get over the line before the deadline.
OK, so this one's close. This one is done. Manchester City have re-signed Ilkay Gundogan from Barcelona on a free. Now, he rejoins on a 1-year contract with the option of a further year. Now, Gundogan admitted he was nervous to see the City fans' reaction, given the fact he chose to leave the club last summer.
I'm normally not that type of guy who looks so much into social media. But, you know, when something like that is close and the people start to talk about it, and, I mean, a reality also is that I left last year, you know, so there could be a lot of people that say, okay, he left, but we don't want him back or whatever, you know. But I read a little bit and, you know, like 99.9% was just amazing and positive, you know, people wishing me to come back. It just showed me that this decision is just so right, and it feels also so right, to be honest.
Yeah, City fans love Silky Ilky. Let's talk Mark Gay. How close is he to being a Newcastle player, Michael?
I don't think massively close at the moment. We told you for the last few days that talks have been pretty positive between Newcastle and Crystal Palace, and I don't think they're completely far off in terms of meeting the valuation, add-ons, performance-related. But Oliver Glasner's confirmed in his press conference today that he will start tomorrow for Palace and will captain the side. And I think that says a lot about Mark Gay as the person, the professional. As we've said over the last few weeks, he's made no desire. He hasn't gone up to Steve Parish saying, I want to leave. He's got on with his job. He's a real pro, and that's proved tomorrow. Oliver Glasner, he'll wear the captain's armband. No issues from him. But look, could be a really interesting next 7 days for Crystal Palace, because they've lost. Well, Fulham have signed Joachim Andersen today from Crystal Palace. Initial 25 million plus 5 million in performance-related add-ons. 5-year contract for Joachim Andersen with an option of a further year. I mean, that's great for him personally. Of course, he knows Fulham from a successful loan there. But people have asked me before, what, both leaving? Yeah, in an ideal world, you'd want one of them to stay. But I think one source told me that it was a very good. Palace feel it's a very good fee they received for Andersen.
OK, so they're going to do some business, aren't they, Palace?
I think Palace will probably be one of the busiest clubs next week.
Right, OK. Now, yesterday on the Transfer Show, we brought you the news that Kieran Trippier is looking to leave Newcastle to get more first-team football. This is what his current manager, Eddie Howe, had to say today.
The situation is business as usual. Trips has trained really well this week. I'm surprised at a lot of the stories that have come out. A valuable member of the squad. His professionalism has been first class. He's trained really well since he's come back from the Euros. I think he's only had 2 weeks training, hence the decision to not start him at the weekend. It continues to be really valued by all of us.
Yeah, valued. He was their marquee signing. Are you surprised that there's even a chance that he could leave?
Not massively, Mike. I mean, there were murmurings in January and there was interest from Bayern Munich. I think it means a lot to Newcastle fans because he was the first signing under the new takeover when Newcastle were 19th. I think he's got that bond there with the Newcastle United supporters. However, obviously, Timo Livramento has started the season in that right-back position. Bruno Guimaraes has now got the team captain's armbands. So that might have upset him a little bit. So, yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few days. But I can't say I'm massively surprised, Mike.
OK. Well, I'm surprised. Dharmesh, let's talk Manuel Ugarte, which we've done a lot in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Right, so PSG have got a match against Montpellier tonight. And guess who's not in the squad? Manuel Ugarte. There remains a willingness from all parties, the player, PSG and Manchester United, to get a deal over the line. However, and I just want to temper this because given the finances that are involved in this deal, there is no guarantee that it is going to happen, even though there is a willingness from everyone to make sure that it does. Talks are at an advanced stage between the clubs over what we think is a permanent deal. United want to do a permanent deal, so do PSG. But such is the need and the desire to want to get this deal over the line, alone with an obligation to buy as well, that has been mooted. Now, compromising on the transfer fee, because that was the big issue, the big gap in valuation. But both clubs have decided to compromise on that. That's why we're still talking about this potential deal happening. But it's clear that a deal would be made easier from a Manchester United perspective if they were able to make sales. Now, I'm not saying that if they don't make sales, the deal is off. I'm just saying it would make it easier for that deal to get over the line. Now, Ugarte is desperate to move. Personal terms are not expected to be a problem. Manchester United are desperate to sign him because they feel he would be perfect for the way that Erik ten Hag wants to play. PSG are very, very eager to get this move done. They've just brought in João Neves from Benfica for £50 million. He's starting in that position. Ugarte's not even in the squad, as I mentioned. And for those three reasons is why there's a permanent option on the table, but why they are also discussing the potential of a loan with an obligation as well. OK, so to get him, do they have to sell him? Like I said, it would help. It would help to smooth this deal along. Now, at the moment, Scott McTominay is a Manchester United player. Napoli, though, are still very, very interested in doing a deal for the Scottish international in the final 7 days of this transfer window. But that is if they can make the necessary sales that would raise the funds to be able to do a deal, which is going to be quite a big one for Napoli, because it would be in excess of £25-30 million. United, for their part, even though we've been saying he's an important member of their squad, according to Erik ten Hag, we do think that they would consider offers for Scott McTominay if they are suitable ones. But the final decision would obviously rest with the player, because he's still under contract at United. He's got a year left of that deal, and United have the option to extend that for a further year. So for now, he remains a United player, and Napoli's focus, even though they're interested in him, and Billy Gilmour as well from Brighton, their focus, as we've been mentioning throughout this show, is Romelu Lukaku. OK, so for now, he's a United player. For now, Ivan Toney is a Brentford player. Michael, how long is that going to be the case?
We don't know, Mike. Obviously, there was a valuation from Al Ali, which Brentford said was too low. Obviously, Thomas Frank, and we ask him every week about Ivan Toney, but there's been no massive development yet. We'll see if he's in the squad this weekend. So, yeah, it rumbles on.
OK, all right. That is the transfer show at 5.